Good evening and welcome to the 10th Annual National Agenda Speaker Series. I'm Dr. Lindsay Hoffman, Director of the series and Associate Director of the Center for Political Communication. This year's theme calls attention to the power of us, the citizens of the United States. We've held 3 National Agenda Without Borders events, drawing in nearly 600 viewers from nearly 20 states and 4 countries. Tonight, we're continuing the conversation about the election and national security as we enter the transition phase between Election Day and Inauguration Day, with Julia Ioffe and a special appearance by NPR's Domenico Montanaro. As always, National Agenda is about demonstrating civil dialogue and engaging with our UD community. Even though we are virtual, we will be asking audience members to submit questions. So just type your question into chat and it may be selected during our Q&A at the end of this talk. I also want to welcome our partner university, Professor Maya Hutchins and her students at the University of Florida, and our co-sponsor at UD, the Biden School of Public Policy. Tonight, Julia Ioffe, correspondent of GQ magazine, former staff writer at The Atlantic, and former Russian correspondent for The New Yorker, is a leading authority on Russian-US relations. Ioffe's area of expertise, built on years of in-depth reporting in Russia, acknowledges Russia's threat against American democracy while placing emphasis on the way the media, both right and left, can both over and underestimate Russia's strategic coherence and capabilities. Born in Moscow, Ioffe's family moved to America when she was 7 years old as refugees. Welcome, Julia.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We also welcome a special guest tonight, NPR's senior political editor and a UD alum, Domenico Montanaro. If you read or listen to his reporting, you know he's one of the best at condensing complicated events into a digestible format, even in the midst of a global pandemic and a historic election. That's why I've invited him here for a quick segment I'll call, What the Heck is Going On? Welcome, fellow Blue Hen Domenico. So thanks to both of you for joining us virtually, and to all those who served or continue to serve, happy Veterans Day. And thanks to the hundreds joining us from 17 states, including Delaware, Florida, and Arizona. We also welcome folks joining us from the UK, the Netherlands, and Mexico. Thanks to all of you for joining us tonight and this season for important conversations. So let's start with Domenico. We are in a fast-paced news cycle. What's going on? What do we need to know about the election results, about Trump, about Biden right now at 7:35 p.m. on Wednesday, November 11th?
And I'm sure you put that in there because you never know what it's going to be at 8 o'clock or whatever is going to happen next. I mean, I think the first thing that we have to understand and realize is that Biden won. Like, there's no going to be overturning that. Trump is going to try all of the different things that he can try to do, but there isn't a whole lot he can do. I mean, the fact is Biden has, his margins are too high in across these states, even though it's a close election. He's up by 14,000 votes in Georgia. He's up by 40,000 plus in Pennsylvania, 35,000 in Nevada, about 15,000 in Arizona. And that's probably going to be about where it is, maybe a little closer, maybe a little farther apart. Wisconsin, Michigan's 146,000 vote margin. Like, this isn't going to change. Recounts will change a few hundred votes if you're lucky. There was a study that showed between 2000 and 2015 from Fair Vote that of 27 recounts, they changed an average of 282 votes. And actually, right now, what we're seeing is with a little more than half of the counties certified in Wisconsin, Biden actually picked up 157 votes because one county sort of, messed up their inputs. But there's no widespread fraud. It's not only is there no evidence of widespread fraud, there is no widespread fraud. Just, this is not something that's happened over the years. Once in a while, you'll have people, sure, who fill out the wrong ballot. They put the wrong name. They do something surreptitious. But it's not in the magnitude and order it would need to be able to overturn this election. So President Trump has become the first president in the modern television era to not concede. And he hasn't done it so far. And I think the piece of this that, that shouldn't be surprising from President Trump. What is, I think, continues to be a thing that is, I guess, somewhat surprising, is how many Republicans are continuing to enable and coddle this idea. You know, they are doing it because they want Trump votes in these Georgia Senate races that are coming up, that will determine control of the Senate. But, you know, you have to ask if that's worth your integrity.
Well, I'm going to toss it to Julia. You are an expert interviewer. You have written for many long-form magazines, including The Atlantic, The New Republic, The New Yorker, GQ. What questions do you have for Domenico tonight?
So Domenico, I'm, longtime listener, first time caller here. In our some of our earlier sessions with the students, we were talking about the shy Trump voter and
Right.
what effect he or she may have had on this election. I was wondering, was that a phenomenon in this election as well? And if so, what was the magnitude of that phenomenon this time around? And did it sway the election at all?
Well, clearly the polls were wrong. And where they were wrong, or how they were wrong, is that they underrepresented Republicans. It's not so much that they got Biden's number wrong, because Biden's going to wind up with about 51% of the vote. That's pretty close to where the polls have had it, 50, 52, 53, 49. That's all fine. Where the problem is I think it's not so much the shy Trump voter. I've talked to a Republican pollster about this over the last couple of days, and I talked to the people who do polling for us at Marist. Is it a shy phenomenon? I never thought it was. It's more of a non-response thing. So, we all know, if you know Trump people, and I know them in my life, I know them from going out and reporting, they hate the media. They hate pollsters. There is a virulent, distrust of what we do. They think we have an agenda. Trump has, seeded that even more. So point is, these are all theories at this point, but the first one that I've been looking at and asking pollsters about is, what do you do to make up for non-response among Trump voters? Because I think that it's clear that they're just not picking up the phone, or when they do pick up the phone, they're not talking to them. So I think that makes it really hard. The other piece of this election that was tough for pollsters, but they keep coming back to statistically, is the massive amount of early vote. They just had no historical precedent to be able to adjust for all of that early vote. So what they found in their samples, the one consistent thing that they keep seeing is that the early vote sample, they have too many people in their samples saying that they were going to vote early. And we know that overwhelmingly those early voters went to Biden. So, that really poisoned the well. And they didn't have, a historical thing to go off of. Now, the shy Trump voter is still a myth. This idea that where there are shy, what people who support Trump, there's some consistency for when they're shy. It's usually, women, more college educated women, who, when they're around friends and in public, don't want to say that they're supporting Trump because of the fervent disapproval of Trump and the pushback that they get, and they don't want that confrontation. That's totally understandable. But what I asked one Republican pollster was, okay, I get that, but does that mean that they're not telling pollsters that they support Trump? And he said, no. He thinks that, because when we found this in our focus group that we did in Arizona, it was really funny because we had people, if people know focus groups beforehand, we know which direction people are going to vote, right? The people watching it and reporting on it. So we knew we had 3 or 4 Trump supporters in the group. But when the conversation started getting to Trump, they kept qualifying support. And they're like, I'm not sure who I'm voting for, right? That's not a shy Trump voter saying to pollsters they're not going to vote for them. They're saying they don't want to say it to a group of people that they're voting for him. Now, I just think overall, Trump people distrust the media, distrust pollsters, and didn't want to talk to them.
So I have a follow-up question on that. What about polls done by, say, Fox News? They were also doing their polls that also showed Trump far behind or further behind. They don't trust Fox pollsters either? Well,
I don't know. Trump has sort of made Fox part of the lamestream media now. So maybe that's a piece of it. I don't know. I think that polls in general have just gotten a bad name from Trump people. This is by no means quantitative, what I'm telling you. This is qualitative assessment of really guesses at this point. These are hypotheses that have to be studied with some rigor to figure out what actually did go wrong. But there's going to be a reckoning with the polling industry. And frankly, this time around, I put a lot less stock in the polls and the analyses that I created. I'm glad that my last electoral map really dove into what I felt like was the potential path for President Trump to win. And it came a lot closer than what the polls would show. You know, that Pennsylvania was where it was going to come down to, and that there was the path to a 259, where Trump would, Trump or Biden would win based on Pennsylvania. The only thing that got thrown off, well, not even only, these are important things that were thrown off by that, is the diversifying Sun Belt. And the fact that Arizona and Georgia, they were both pretty close to what the polls showed, those two states, basically 50-50 states where Biden came out on top in the end so far. So those were the two sort of differences. Where we saw the polls way off were in Republican states. I mean, just across the board, Ohio, Iowa, Missouri, Montana, just across the board, Indiana. Indiana was 11 points coming into the election. Montana was within 6. Those were blowouts. They were blowouts. They were 20 points or more. And I just have to think that that is Republicans not talking to pollsters and undersampling of Republicans. And I really do think data is great, but you can't over rely on data. And I was saying this in 2016. I feel it even more strongly now that demography is really important. I mean, the reason why Democrats are having a hard time in the upper Midwest and Midwest is because all of those states, Ohio, Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, are all majority white non-college voters. So the voting eligible population is 50% or more whites without college degrees. That's Trump's base. And that has flipped away from this lunch pail Democratic voter to more of a cultural Republican voter. Democrats used to get those voters. Now they're getting educated white voters. That's a wholesale change. Republicans used to be the ones who won suburban educated whites. When you're in the middle of a political realignment, it's tough to see the forest. And I think too many people were looking at the bark on the tree.
Well, if I can follow up with you on that, Domenico, before we let you go, because I know you have lots of things to do. What do we need to be looking for between now and Inauguration Day? Like, what normally happens and what do you expect will be different this year?
Well, a lot of things are going to be different. I think that we're still watching for whether or not someone can get to President Trump to take the temperature down, to go out and either go out and make a concession or just on a paper statement, acknowledge that he'll leave on the 20th or 21st of January. I don't even think that's that important, to be honest. Like, I think that there's a national security issue that is important. And we saw tonight James Lankford, a Republican from Oklahoma, senator, say that if Biden's not getting classified intelligence reports by Friday, then he's going to intervene to try to make that happen. Because the 9/11 Commission did say, when they did their report, that it's a national security threat. It was a problem for the Bush administration that the election dragged on. They didn't have a smooth hand-in-glove transition, and the country was more at risk than it would have been if there was a smoother transition with cooperation. And when you don't have a smooth transition with cooperation like we're seeing right now, and you're undercutting what the integrity of the election, which is the thing that separates the United States from corrupt countries around the world, you're setting up a recipe for a national security disaster, and something that the Russians, the Chinese are perfectly happy with seeing that kind of chaos, because it means that a Western democracy just doesn't measure up or is just as bad as an authoritarian country or one that's a one-party rule system. So that's a big risk, but our polarization and the idea of putting the t-shirt on has really made it so difficult for people to get outside of themselves and realize that that's a big potential problem. So I want to see what happens over the next few weeks. Do Republicans start to get to him, or do they hold this line that they're going to go to court, they're going to let it play out, which is fine. You can go to court, but that means once you lose, then, you move on and accept the results. But that's not something he's given any indication of. I wouldn't bet on him being gracious about any of this. I would bet on him doing what he did in 2016 and blaming millions and millions of illegal votes and continue out the door doing the same thing. I think that the moves at the Pentagon certainly are raising a lot of eyebrows, where you have suddenly people who are loyalists to Trump in some higher level positions. Now, those aren't positions that are chain of command positions. So my national security reporters tell us, I don't know that much about the Pentagon, to be honest. I haven't done that much reporting there, but they're saying that those are not chain of command positions. So, I think we have to watch that. We have to watch the certifications of votes. Pennsylvania certifies their votes on the 23rd. Wisconsin has the latest certification date, December 1st. There are a bunch of certification dates. This is very normal. Vote counting takes a while. 2018, there were multiple House races in California that never got called until a few weeks later. And it really blunted what was a huge Democratic wave in 2018. And that's why we've been preaching patience. We've been calling this election season, not election day. And, I do hope that people remain patient, see how it's playing out, and, stay on top of the lawsuits that Trump has filed, see if they go anywhere. Most of them won't. But, he's going to have his day in court with a lot of those. And let's see also, we just hit 10 million coronavirus cases in the United States. Does the lame duck session produce any kind of coronavirus relief package? It was held up by politics. Will it pass this time around? I think those are a few things to watch.
Well, thank you so much, Domenico, and welcome back virtually to the University of Delaware, fighting blue hens.
I know. We have an alum who's likely going to be in the White House, which is kind of amazing.
Delaware is an interesting place to be right now. So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
I'm going to toss it over to Julia now. We're going to talk a little bit about the election, as well as Russian interference, potential Russian interference in the election. So Julia, 2020 saw over 158 million voters turn out to vote. That amounts to 20 million more Americans than came out in 2016. And more than 71 million voted for President Trump. What brought so many people to vote this year? And who were they? What do you know about the voters in 2020?
Oh, I think, I think this is a better question for Domenico, but I think, it's been such polarizing and heated for years. I think people who are not interested or following politics at all before 2016 certainly tuned in and plugged in after 2016. And I think a lot of people were mobilized on both sides. We saw, one extreme example of that was what Stacey Abrams did in Georgia, after she was burned by Kemp, who was then the Secretary of State of Georgia, turning away a lot of voters and purging voter rolls. She decided that was the way forward. And I think that's historically what we've seen is Democrats try to turn out more voters and Republicans try to tamp that down, right? So she turned out 800,000 new voters in Georgia. That's a massive, massive number. But I think you just saw a really energized electorate on both sides. And especially given that this election was framed as an existential struggle, again, on both sides, that, vote like your life depends on it because it does, was the Democratic message. And on the right, the message was they're coming for your home, they're coming for your neighborhood. This is an existential threat to the American way of life. Joe Biden's going to bring in socialism. So it was this kind of apocalyptic millenarian messaging that I think motivated a lot of people, as did, I think, the coronavirus, which helped a lot of states open voting, make it more easy. I live in DC. DC just sent out mail-in ballots to everybody. You didn't even have to ask for it, and you could drop it off. You could mail it in. I know a few other states did that. And it did make voting a lot easier than it normally is, I think, right? Usually it's on a Tuesday. A lot of people work. A lot of lower income people, might not even know what their schedule is, a couple days in advance, let alone be able to take several hours to stand in line at a, crowded election center on Tuesday. This time you had weeks and weeks to vote. And by the time actual election day rolled around, it was, something like 100 million Americans had already voted. And election day ended up being kind of the end of the election as opposed to the actual day when voting happens.
Well, one thing we know is that young people turned out in particular in great numbers this year. In a focus group conducted the day after Election Day by Georgetown University, moderators were surprised at how young people were willing to say, I'm not sure my individual vote is swinging an election, but I'm doing it because I think I'm going to be the deciding vote. By casting my ballot, even if it's not the make or break vote, it's at least sending the message that I care. So what role did young people play in this election?
So I think voting was a lot easier for people this year. I think it's traditionally been very hard for young people to vote. They're still moving around. They're maybe in college. They haven't registered to vote in the new place where they're going to college, or they've just, left college and are moving around to different cities. They don't know where they're going to put down roots. I think, ironically, the pandemic and the measures taken to allow for absentee voting, mail-in voting, made it easier for a lot of young people. Also, I think just the issues really animated people. I think a lot of, we see the younger generation just seems to be more politically engaged than my generation ever was. I remember I was in college when we invaded Iraq and, no one bat an eye, nobody really cared. And the younger generation just seems to be more active, more engaged. I think the sense I get is that they feel they were, sold a false bill of goods, that, unlike for other generations where each successive generation has it better than their parents' generation, the younger generation is footing the bill for a lot of what their parents and grandparents did and had. Climate change, the bill is kind of coming due on that. Political polarization, racial injustice, all these things are kind of coming to a head as a lot of young people are coming of age. And again, I think there was also, a lot of work done to get them to register to vote and to actually get out and vote and cast a ballot.
Well, the New York Times reported today that election officials in dozens of states representing both political parties said there was no evidence that fraud or other irregularities played a role in the outcome of the presidential race, amounting to a forceful rebuke of President Trump's portrait of a fraudulent election. And I'd like if Domenico could join us again to talk about how we also see a poll from YouGov and The Economist came out today to demonstrate that there's not a lot of confidence in the results of the election. Indeed, 86% of Trump supporters said that Biden did not legitimately win the election, and 73% said we'll never know the real outcome of this election. How does this lack of confidence, particularly among the president's supporters, impact the transition to a Biden White House? I'll throw that to you, Domenico.
Does that mean we're allowed to quote polls again? I have poll TSD right now. It's like, it's too much, but
poll
look,
TSD, that's good.
I think that even anecdotally, Trump supporters don't trust the results of the election. I think that number, the 86%, is probably, about right. Yeah, plus, we're right in the middle of the heat of it, and they have a person that their leader is, who they listen to, telling them it's fraudulent. So that's why the peaceful transfer of power is so important in this country, and why it's been such an important thing since the mid-19th century or so, to have leaders and have changes in this country where you don't have coups, where you don't have civil unrest, because have leaders who take the temperature down. It's the same thing with mask wearing. If Trump went out there and said definitively, everyone should wear a mask, just wear a mask, go when you go to the store, it's inconvenient, yes, but look, I'm wearing one, I'm taking it off to talk, but I'm going to put one back on when I leave. Like, this won't be forever. This is just to get, if he did all of that and took the temperature down, guarantee you the polls would show more Trump voters supportive of wearing masks. It's the same thing with accepting an outcome of an election. And I think that's the most dangerous thing right now in this country is if you can't agree on a shared set of facts, you can't have a society. And I think that is a really dangerous place because, yes, we've had politicians of all stripes undermine the media and say the media, go back to Spiro Agnew and watch his, television conferences about how much the TV has changed, the news, and they're just out for ratings and how terrible they are. All that's true, but now we're so fractured that there is no one voice that people trust and listen to in the media. And it's like everything's confirmation bias. If I believe something, I can find a link for it, and therefore you're wrong. And there's such an anti-elitism growing out of the populist right that started with Sarah Palin, frankly, that it is really ripped apart the idea that you're right about something, so you should then be humble, realize you're wrong, and change based on the facts, right? Like, I guess I grew up in New York, so it's like an argumentative. I grew up in New York in an Italian family, so it's like an argumentative place. But nobody's feelings could be hurt if you were wrong. Like, that was the rule. Like, you could listen to sports radio and you could be all fired up and angry, and then if you got proven wrong, you had to sort of walk away, tail between your legs. That doesn't happen anymore. Now, if you want to be right, you can stick to it, and somebody's going to tell you are. And I think that's really dangerous. It's really dangerous for a society if 1 + 1 = 3 for one person and 1 + 1 = 2 for another. It's just you can't maintain a society that way. And I don't know. My dad's a lot more optimistic than I am. He's an immigrant and has been here for 50 plus years and still thinks this is the greatest country on earth, and that, that we'll get through this and whatever. But, it's a more polarized time even than, the 1960s when he came here and the 1970s after Watergate.
Well, it's interesting you bring up that optimism thing because Julia, we were talking with our students earlier about being optimistic versus pessimistic. Julia, what are your thoughts on looking at the United States right now and being an optimistic versus a pessimistic immigrant or a refugee coming from Russia?
Yeah, well, when I moved back to the States in 2012, after living there and reporting from there, I got here just in time for the 2012 presidential election. And I remember a fellow, Moscow correspondent who had also just moved back messaging me that day and saying, "Isn't it weird not to know who's going to win? Like, so unusual. We're not used to that after elections in Russia." And I remember, covering Obama's second inauguration and being pretty close up to the stage, and Republican Senator Lamar Alexander from Tennessee giving a short, very grudging speech, like kind of through gritted teeth, saying, the thing that really sets this country apart from other countries is the fact that we have a peaceful transfer of power. And again, I had just come from a country that witnessed crazy kind of once in a generation protests over Putin kind of coming back to office. I just, in spite of myself, I was standing there crying, listening to Lamar Alexander talk about a peaceful transfer of power. He is, believe me, not a very riveting or emotionally kind of grabbing speaker. And I've been thinking about that moment in the last couple of days. Domenico was saying it's dangerous that we can't all agree on what 1 + 1 =, and the fact that we're so polarized. What I worry about is, like, I understand people trying to take down the temperature and trying to get people to remain calm and saying, don't worry, like, the election is clear. Biden did win. He's going to be president come January. Most of these suits don't have merit. Yeah, probably. But as other people have pointed out, saying that this is just an attempted coup and not this attempted coup won't be successful is also not very soothing or calming. Um, it's not just that we can't agree on what 1+1 equals, it's that we live in separate information bubbles. And studies done by the Pew Research Center have shown this for years and years now, that especially media consumers who identify as conservative or Republican are increasingly sealed off in their own informational media bubble, where the facts don't align with what the rest of us are reading and seeing and hearing. They're talking about different personalities, different scandals, and different. It's like they're watching a different, soap. With
Liberals are doing the same thing, though. I mean, it's
no, because according to a lot of these studies, liberals consume a pretty diverse diet of media, right? So if you look at liberals, like liberal patterns of media consumption, it's like the chart looks like lots of little balls, right? It's like some people say CNN is their primary choice. For others, it's NPR or New York Times or the Washington Post. Whereas if you look at the right side of the spectrum, it's just all Fox News with like a few others, right? It's like a very unified media space. And it's not just that Donald Trump is telling people that the election isn't, that we may never know who won and that it was stolen, that Joe Biden didn't really win. It's also that Fox News, who apparently is now not loyal enough to Trump, Fox News is repeating this too. I mean, Laura Ingraham yesterday had this like shadowy figure alleging that he saw a bunch of electoral fraud. We saw yesterday a story in the Washington Post that GOP donors were paying money to a man for him to come out and say that he participated in voting fraud. Like, this is having an impact. And even if Joe Biden is sworn in, and even though he won, and even though he's eventually going to be president and he's going to get those briefings and he's going to get the keys to the castle, as it were, the damage that they're doing is, I believe, irreparable. I think you have to remember how Donald Trump got his political start. It was to undermine the legitimacy of Barack Obama and to say that he never could have even been elected president because he wasn't even born here. And nothing, the way he kind of pitched it, and I must say, by the way, Melania Trump actively participated in that hoax, to use his language, as she is participating in this one. There was and after that point, there's absolutely nothing you could say or show to people who believe that, mostly on the right, that would convince them otherwise. Obama, produced a birth certificate, and that still wasn't enough, because that wasn't the point. The point is our team does not believe that this team gets the ball now. And until our team gets the ball, we're going to say that the ref is unfair and that the game is rigged and that the field is kind of tilted and, the planets aren't aligning right and everybody's biased against us. But when we get the ball, everything's fine.
Is that new? Is that new though, or do both parties play that game?
I don't see both parties playing that game. I think Democrats do this thing of, we're the nice guys, we're the civilized guys, we play by the rules. We're not going to play the dirty games that that Republicans play. I mean, of course some do, but it's not, it's not with the same kind of finesse and zest and scale at which Republicans are doing it. I also think we have Newt Gingrich I think, again, politics has always been a contact sport and a bloody one at that, especially in America. But I think this recent era, we can really thank, Newt Gingrich and Roger Ailes for. And Newt Gingrich, as we know, was was a close Trump advisor in 2016, is still very much part of that orbit. He brought this kind of warfare style of politics to the American political system, that it's all just about winning and losing and teams and anything goes. We're seeing it a little bit, honestly, with the Lincoln Project, which has been one of the most fascinating things for me to watch. It's a bunch of Republicans and former Republicans who are producing ads, right, that are just vicious, and they come out with them so fast. When Trump refused to say anything or to condemn the bounties allegedly that the Kremlin was paying to the Taliban to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan, they produced an ad completely in Russian, in excellent Russian. They found some wonderful film narrator to produce. I mean, these are vicious ads. And I'm just like, wow, okay, at least they're, now we see how it works. It's just amazing to see them firing at what was once their own side. But I think a lot of Democrats are also watching them being like, okay, wow, at least they're not firing at us this time. But this is like, wow, that's really mean.
Well, and I should point out that University of Delaware is the epicenter of politics. Steve Schmidt is also a UD alum who ran McCain's campaign and is part of the Lincoln Project. We have Domenico is back joining us. And I want to ask both of you, there's a question from one of my students, Lauren. She's been thinking a lot about how American individualism has been contributing to the spread of coronavirus and America's unwillingness to make small sacrifices for the greater good. Julia, you wrote an article in March about the same idea, and you ended by saying, I wish more Americans would understand that our rugged individualism in the face of illness is sometimes just plain selfishness. What do you think that why do you think American individualism varies from other countries' individualistic tendencies? So we can bring Domenico back into the conversation too, that would be great. Start with Julia.
So, I'm thinking about that now, especially as I'm watching, on my social media feeds, especially on Instagram, for example, all my friends in Moscow partying and going to theaters and rock concerts and having house parties and traveling as if nothing ever happened. And there, when I try to ask them why they're not wearing masks, why they're not social distancing, why they're doing all these indoor activities that to me just seem unthinkable now after, however, 9 months of the pandemic, they say, life has to go on. You can't be like half dead, half alive because you don't have a life. It's fate, this is kind of fatalistic approach, right? The end result is similar. In the States, it's this like, don't tread on me thing, and you won't tell me what to do. And I've assessed the risks, and I don't really trust science or experts. And it's something I think, de Tocqueville wrote about, this kind of, again, distrust of experts and eggheads and people who think they're smarter than me and like, don't you dare tell me what to do. I think the result is similar. It's just like a different starting point, but they're both pretty dangerous, I think.
You have to come and talk to my media and politics class because the things you're talking about are so relevant to my class. Domenico, do you have thoughts on American individualism and coronavirus?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned a little bit of it earlier, where if President Trump would, come forward and give them license to feel like it was okay to do so, then they wouldn't, feel like they were so put upon. They don't want to listen to the scientists. Trump has made Fauci an enemy now, Dr. Fauci, and so that's where we are. I mean, I feel like we do have a strain in this country of that kind of individualism and a feeling of liberty. And when, you could argue it's really just people not wanting to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I just want to say, I don't think individualism is, a priori bad. I think this is like a twisted version of it. And when I wrote it back in March, I didn't realize that masks would become this potent political symbol, right? Of like, our team just doesn't wear masks, and we're manly men and like courageous women. We don't wear masks, and just like sissy liberals who do, right? That is just like, it becomes yet another kind of partisan totem that separates you from the other team. The problem is that these are, it results in life and death consequences. Talking to one of the scientist doctors at the University of Washington, which was, if you recall, one of the nation's very first hotspot in Seattle, he said, there's a reason that the virus kind of maps, especially after the first wave, maps so neatly onto the electoral map, because it's not really about testing even anymore. It's about choices, about where we go and don't go. You saw, for example, that wedding in Maine where 8 people ended up dying who didn't even go to the wedding because the people who went to the wedding spread it around their community. That biker rally in South Dakota that resulted in hundreds of cases of coronavirus, right? And I think people have, like Domenico said, it's really irresponsible messaging from the top. If Trump just said, like, look, just wear a mask, go to your bike rally or whatever, just wear a mask, it would be a totally different picture. But it just becomes this kind of, again, this yet another kind of team jersey that you wear or don't wear.
Yeah, I wish he had just like said, everyone wear a mask that's a flag, an American flag on your face, and just be patriotic about it. Like, this is about.
And there are some people who do wear masks that say, I think Kelly Loeffler the other day was wearing a mask that said Trump, but it's just, personally, I don't really understand why he's.
I think, Julia, you hit on it though. It's this, it's this masculinity. It's this macho attitude. I find it totally ironic that Trump plays that now at the end of his songs, that are events where he's playing Macho Man, where we can get into all of the psychology behind the wrong use of that. But he also used to use "You Can't Always Get What You Want" as his close song.
Which
so it's just
also didn't make sense. Or
sort of owning. It's this idea of just owning everybody, right? Like, own the libs. Like, that's the idea. Just like, it just becomes, I'm right, you're wrong, thumbs up, thumbs down, Coliseum sort of culture. And, that's not really a way to govern. I mean, the only way that you're going to get anything done in that kind of hyperpolarized environment, which is, by the way, the only way anything's ever gotten done, is to have numbers. Right? It's just to have raw political power and numbers. I mean, the Affordable Care Act doesn't get through without a Democratic Senate, a Democratic House, and a 60th vote to be able to push it through and beat a filibuster, which maybe that'll get blown up.
Can I ask you a follow-up to that? We got, the Affordable Care Act got pushed through, as I understand it, with a House that was pre the 2010 redistricting, right? Yeah. Like, with the redistricting and the gerrymandering that's happening, and more like these really grotesque districts sprouting up all over the country, is that even going to be possible, especially with this, these parallel non-intersecting informational spaces, and where the other side can bring out 71 million people to vote for this guy?
Well, I think
are those numbers even possible anymore?
Democrats, first of all, missed a huge opportunity in this election, because the legislatures that they lost and didn't pick up are going to be the legislatures that draw the districts that we're going to be dealing with for the next decade. So, here we are again in that sense. The other problem is that Democrats, this has been beaten, to a pulp probably, but Democrats have sorted themselves into cities and coasts. So it's a lot easier to draw a little circle around, 15 apartment buildings where 25,000 people live, as opposed to, a huge area, or dividing up blocks easily. There has been a movement for, independent commissions in some places. But, with federalism, people are going to do it how they want, where they want. I don't know if that answers your exact question, but
I think the answer is no.
Yeah, I guess not.
Yeah.
I don't know. The thing is, sometimes redistricting can backfire. Like, you can take it too far to the point where you stretch things out, because there's two ways you redistrict and gerrymander, really. You pack and you crack. So, a city like Austin, Texas has been cracked. It doesn't have one congressperson who represents Austin. They've taken like bits of Austin and shot it out to Tyler, and, shot it out west, right? Like, that's where they're just diffusing. Sometimes what they do, like in North Carolina, which was a district that was racially gerrymandered and taken out, looked like a snake going through one piece of the state, where they basically picked up every black person along the highway and surrounding areas and said, okay, you've got one district, And, but what can happen is when you stretch it so far, if the demography changes, you can wind up shooting yourself in the foot. And, you take a risk, where you had a 53-47 district, and now all of a sudden it changes a couple points and you're 50-50 and you could lose. So, those are some of the balancing acts that they are going to have to weigh.
Well, if I can shift topics a little bit, we had a question from the audience, which I think is on point, because we did advertise this discussion as being about Russian interference. But the election has kind of taken on a new attention level. But I'll direct this to Julia. There's a lot of evidence that Russia infiltrated the election infrastructure in 2016. What do you know about how Russia was involved in this most recent election?
I don't know how much we know, actually. I mean, it just seems like they were doing a bit more of the same. But I think, talking about Russian interference is very much kind of fighting the last war. I think what really changed in this election, well, and the other thing is, I'll say, is that the Russians are trying to be a bit more careful about it. And you see, for example, how they're packaging the fact that Vladimir Putin has yet to congratulate Joe Biden. And today, for example, the deputy foreign minister of Russia said, we're not even going to talk to the Biden transition team. We're not talking to the transition teams anymore until a new president is sworn in January. Then we'll talk to them, because last time we tried to do this in 2016, you guys made us out to be these kind of spy masters and doing all these nefarious things, when actually what we were doing were just basic diplomatic activities. I don't know how true that is, but I think it is a masterful way of kind of spinning the American narrative for their own purposes. I think what was very different in this election than in 2016 and in the aftermath of 2016, when we were obsessing over Russian interference and who was a Russian spy or an influence peddler, or which Facebook group or ad was actually backed by Russia or paid for in rubles, or had funny grammar that looked a lot like Russian grammar, is that Donald Trump threw it wide open. And the fact that there were no real consequences for him for openly on camera, inviting Russian interference during the 2016 campaign, and then saying again openly, China, you want to help me out? Ukraine, you want to help me? He was impeached, if you recall, earlier this year. The outgoing president was impeached for for blackmailing the new president of Ukraine to help him win or provide him with compromise or blackmail on Joe Biden, so that he could win the election if Ukraine wanted to see the aid that we, the US taxpayers, paid for and our representatives in Congress had allotted. So, and then he was acquitted by the Senate. So, what we found out, NPR actually did some great reporting on this in the months leading up to the election. We saw the Colombian government, interfering and selling ads or broadcasting ads in the Miami area saying that Biden was a socialist. This was the kind of right-leaning government of Colombia trying to sway the Latino vote for Trump in the crucial state of Florida. We saw that the Iranians were meddling in this election. The Chinese were meddling in the election. The Russians were still doing what they were doing, but now it was just thrown wide open because A, there were no consequences for Trump. And B, do you remember when he called, so many crazy things have happened in the last 4 years, but do you remember when he said, sitting in the Oval Office, I think he said it to George Stephanopoulos on camera, he said, yeah, when he was asked, would you take foreign help to win your election? And he said, absolutely. And if you're the leader of a foreign country or the leader of a foreign intelligence service, you'd be an idiot not to take him up on that.
Well, we had to say goodnight to Domenico. Fortunately, he had to leave, but it was so nice to have him here. I have a follow-up question on that. What happens after a Trump presidency? Where does he go? Where do his supporters go? And do you think he will run again in 2024?
I worry, actually. Again, I think this goes to the first question we started with about the vast majority of Republicans believing that Joe Biden is not the real winner of the election, that we may never know who won, as if it's just some like unknowable galactic secret. I think he's going to continue playing spoiler both for Democrats and for. I just saw someone add to the chat, we hope he'll go to jail. I doubt that. I doubt he'll be going to jail. I doubt a Biden Department of Justice would want to set that precedent. I don't know that they would maybe get in the way of kind of regional branches going after him, but I think they're probably going to discourage them from prosecuting Trump or the Trump family because of the precedent it sets. And again, it goes against this kind of let's lower the temperature, let's come together, which is a very admirable message. But I don't think the people who follow Trump are going to heed that message. I don't think the right-wing media is going to heed that message. I think Trump still has his Twitter feed, which he grew exponentially in the 4 years that he was in office. I think he's going to, he's talked about continuing doing rallies, which forget the fact that they're super spreader events and many, hundreds of infections have been linked to them. He's going to continue having these rallies. He's thinking about running for 2024. And even if he doesn't run in 2024, that means he's going to be sticking sticks in the spokes of Republicans' wheels. All the people who thought they were going to run in 2024, like, God, what is her name? From the former UN ambassador, Nikki Haley. If the former president and this kind of cult hero of the right is constantly like, I'm going to run, I'm going to run, I'm going to run, people are going to be scared to run. So I don't think that's going to be really great for, I think that's going to be terrible for Republicans as well. But I also think he's going to continue rallying the troops to continue to delegitimize the Biden presidency and to give, which will also give cover to people like Mitch McConnell, who is not, the most cooperative guy on earth. And I think that the next 4 years are not going to be that great. I don't think the Biden administration is going to get a lot done. I think Republicans in Congress are not going to be wanting to cooperate with him, especially when Trump continues to whip up their base, maybe even turning the base against them, threatening to primary them. We'll see how much power he still has, but I don't see him going away anytime soon, unfortunately. That does not bode well for our system.
Let's think about it. He won the most votes of any presidential candidate ever, except for Joe Biden. So, there are a huge number of people who still support him. Let's get some questions in the queue for the Q&A. I'm going to wrap up my last questions with you, and then we're going to welcome questions from the audience. So please, if you want to use the chat function, you can enter your questions there. And some of my students are going to be your audience surrogates who will ask questions of Julia on your behalf. Let's get a little bit more personal. Emma, one of my students, asked, she said, I read your piece about your experience with coronavirus, and I'm so sorry for all that you've gone through. Would you mind sharing more about your experience getting the coronavirus and what you took away from it?
Thank you so much for asking about that. I'm thankfully feeling a lot better. It was just a very bizarre experience, because I never once tested positive and was diagnosed clinically, because there was basically every doctor I saw or spoke to said, I'm not really sure what else this could be. But it was this kind of very long, we talked about this earlier, I think with your class. It was just weird. It was like nothing I'd ever had before. And I think there was this, it really cured me of this kind of, this fallacy that I think a lot of us are living with, which is like, well, if I'm not going to die, right? If I'm a young, healthy person, if I'm not going to die, I'm not really that scared of it. And why should I curtail my life all that much? Well, you probably won't die of it. It's true. But I feel like 2 months have just kind of dropped out of my life, which is a long time, especially when you're in it. And I think a lot of people have this roller coaster experience with COVID where you don't feel that bad, and then suddenly you crash, and then you feel like you're feeling a lot better and you're almost recovered, and then you crash even harder. and you're sick for so long that people don't really feel like, even checking up on you anymore because it's kind of boring. And it's not as, and it's not as acute, right? So you're in this, like being sick for such a long time, and then taking so long to recover again is like no other illness I've ever had. And again, it kind of, belatedly cured me of, that kind of idea that if I'm not going to die, it's not a big deal.
Wow. Well, okay, so usually at this point we jump into the audience Q&A, and I'm seeing lots of questions coming in on our chat. We have some producers on the back end who are monitoring all these questions and assigning them to our students. So the Q&A is a little different this year, obviously. We're reading through your questions in the chat. There's still time to submit them if you want to submit a question. And for each question chosen, one of my students in the National Agenda class will read the question. And so we're going to start with Angelina. Angelina, what's our first question from the audience?
Taylor from Florida asks, do you think that the amount of people who say that they don't think Biden won the election are participating in partisan cheerleading? Or is the right-wing media, Fox, social media groups, and other fringe outlets driving people to actually believe this?
I think, unfortunately, it's the latter. And I also don't know that there's even I think it's a distinction without a difference. I don't think there's a distinction to be made. At what point does partisan cheerleading, if it affects the way you treat the incoming president and see the political system as a whole and the lack of trust you have in it, at what point do your intentions or your kind of secret motivations stop mattering? And I think they don't really matter much at all. I think it really undermines trust in the integrity of our institutions, which again, a lot of the wonderfully optimistic people have said, but it's okay, the institutions will save us. Well, it's been 4 years, and a lot of the institutions have been really badly damaged, and institutions aren't magic things that are, they're not like, those superheroes who can like just shoot out this like magic shield and nothing can go through it. That's not what an institution is. Nothing, in some ways, just the people, like the norms, the laws, and the people who are in it. And if, all the norms are broken and people are driven out and replaced with loyalists, and nobody trusts what they do or say outside of them, I don't know, how meaningful they are. So, we keep falling back on this word, this magic word, like it's our safety word. But I think at some point, if you erode trust in these institutions, they're not going to save us anymore.
The pessimist, as always.
I'm sorry. I would love to be wrong. I hope I am wrong. I would love nothing more than to eat my words. But so far, it's been pretty grim. And I think, that's not my doing.
You made a good point earlier, is that, we can have trust in these institutions, but ultimately these institutions are filled with human beings who are flawed and who could make bad decisions.
Who are vulnerable, who have mortgages, who have children to provide for, who have people dependent on them, and who maybe don't have lots of other career opportunities. If you're a top DOJ official and you quit and protest, I'm sure some white shoe law firm is going to pick you up and pay you handsomely. But if you're, somebody lower down in a less kind of sexy agency, or one that's less kind of in the spotlight, and you're in an area like an economically depressed area, what other options do you have? So again, people have weak spots, and they're not these they're not superheroes, and institutions aren't a superpower.
We're all human. I think sometimes we don't recognize that. We think people are elected to office or elected to whatever position they're in, or selected to be in that position. And somehow, like you said, they're superheroes, but they're also still human. They're subject to the same fears and,
weaknesses.
Exactly. All right, so I'm going to move on to our next student questioner, who's going to ask a question for our audience. My student Julie is here to ask a question of you.
Pierre Bono asks, from your perspective, how would you assess Putin and where does he fall on the spectrum of strategic competence?
So we have a Putin question. You are no longer really doing a lot of
No, that's okay.
journalism on Putin, but you are an expert. So if you can give us some.
Sure. So I think it depends. And it depends who you're comparing him to. And, if you're measuring him against the figure that many of my colleagues in the media drew of him in 2017, 2018, no, he is not that brilliant strategist who makes detailed and elaborate plans and then has the capacity to execute them flawlessly. He is not that person. And in fact, lots of phenomenal reporting has been done, including by my friend Michael Schwartz at the New York Times, about how and by Bellingcat, this wonderful body of investigative journalists in Europe, about, how the kind of strategy and the nefarious goals are undermined by the incompetence, like GRU officers on their way to execute a mission, leaving taxi receipts behind that have the point of origin as the GRU headquarters. So there's that. But then if you're comparing him against Trump, then yeah, he is a master strategist of Machiavellian and Kissingerian proportions. I think he was doing laps around our outgoing president, and it shows in our foreign policy.
All right, we've got lots of questions coming in, so let's keep cycling through my students who are going to ask the questions for our audience. Next up is Eleni. Eleni, what's our audience question?
Jim Parks asks, do you think it's possible that Trump will resign and Pence will pardon him? And is Ford's pardon of Nixon a precedent for this year?
No, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he is not going to resign. So many people have been expecting him to resign for 4 years. Early on, people were saying, oh, look, he doesn't like this job. He hates the White House. He didn't expect it to be this hard. He's going to resign. Here we are. Oh, he doesn't want to be impeached. He's going to resign. Here we are. I think I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I don't want to diagnose him, but it does seem that Donald Trump has a personality that is very similar to a narcissistic personality. And he talks about it all the time. He doesn't want to be the loser. When his oldest son, Donald Trump Jr., was born and his first wife, Ivana, wanted to name him Donald after his father, Donald Trump said, no, we can't name him that because what if he's a loser? So I don't think, yeah, it's a wonderful story. So, yeah. I think a resignation of any kind would be a capitulation and labeling of himself as a loser. And I don't think he can survive that. I mean, he can't even take losing an election. I don't know how we're going to get him out of the White House, to be honest. So I don't think resignation is on the table, unfortunately.
All right, well, let's move on. We've got
sorry. It's just like a ray of sunshine here.
You are, it's okay, I think, to offer a pessimistic viewpoint of things that are happening. I think, as we talked about earlier, and I'm the eternal optimist. So in some ways, I really enjoy speaking with someone who's like, actually, this could go really south from here on out. I think we can have a little bit dose of both. So
I do have to say that, like, in my life, I'm an eternal optimist. Like, I don't get super pessimistic about my life and what's around me. And I think that is kind of a product of my privilege. But I do think, and I think optimism plays a really important role, because if you have a country full of pessimists, then you get Russia, and then nothing can ever get done. And also, like, compared to Americans, Russians think I'm an eternal optimist and just ridiculous, right? So, like, talking to my Russian friends who, would complain about a job or a relationship, I'm like, well, get out, get a new job, find a new boyfriend, right? And they were like, what are you talking about? Everything's going to be terrible forever. and I should just resign myself to my fate. Whereas Americans have this kind of can-do optimism, and I think that's really, really important. And this country would not be built or be what it is without it. But I think we are in a period of time where I don't even think it's pessimism. I think it's realism. And I think it's not about just, inventing kind of worst case scenarios. It's about looking reality in the face, looking at what Trump and his team are capable of and what they're likely to do, and being prepared, as opposed to kind of being blindsided and shocked and upset every time.
Well, and I think it's important to recognize that, our history in the United States, and of course in many other countries, is like, it's not all puppies and rainbows. Like we do approach hard times. And I think a lot of my college students right now are sort of like dumbfounded by what we're experiencing. And I myself am too. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, Xennial, whatever you want to call it. And it's not something we've really experienced before. But I think it's important for us to kind of recognize, like, things can go south quickly and badly. And so, like, what are your suggestions for young people about what they should do to kind of deal with this sort of angst and this stress during this time?
If I'm honest, I admire the younger generation kind of coming up behind us so much. I wish that I were part of that generation, seeing how politically engaged they are, how active they are, how just plugged in, and how, this word has gotten has gotten batted around and been badly damaged, but how woke they are. They make me feel like an old fogey that has to kind of keep catching up and evolving my understanding. I think they're already on the right path. And I think they're probably more realistic than our generation was in terms of what the world in this country can offer them and what their prospects are. In terms of my advice, I would say, learn to be flexible and tough, and think outside the box in terms of what your career might look like or what your life might look like, and understand that it might not be the cookie cutter life or even what you imagined for yourself, and kind of roll with it and don't dwell on how things could have been or should have been.
All right, that's great. Let's move to our next student questioner, Maisie. What's your question from the audience?
This question is from Sharon Miriam Nay, and she wants to know, given that Trump openly admitted that he would accept foreign help in the election, what are your thoughts about how dangerous he might be during this transition of time or after he is out of office, with whatever knowledge of security issues he may have?
So the Washington Post the other day had a great story about this, about how national security officials and experts are worried that he might reveal classified information at will. And I think he will 100% do that. We saw him do it while in the Oval Office. Literally in the Oval Office. He had, I think it was May 2017, shortly after he fired Jim Comey, he had the Russian foreign minister and the Russian ambassador in the Oval Office. And he shared with them intelligence that wasn't even American intelligence. It was Israeli intelligence that he didn't have Israeli permission to share. I think the Israelis understanding, who's the senior partner in the relationship, didn't say anything, but I think it freaked a lot of people out. And the president is the ultimate determinant of what information is classified and unclassified. So if he says it, then it's unclassified, and he can do that. I don't know that that's the law, right? He can just declassify it as he wishes. When he's a former president, I don't know. It would be ironic, given how his administration has cracked down on leaks of classified information across the agencies. I know in the CIA, they have really been cracking down. People are getting polygraph tests, lie detector tests all the time. They're using all kinds of new data and data processing tools to figure out who has been talking to journalists and when. We know the Obama administration went after leakers a lot, but this administration has been really aggressive. So it would be ironic to see Trump start leaking information or declassifying information after he leaves office, given how tough his administration has been on leaks.
Interesting. All right, well, let's move on to my student Winston, who's got another question from the audience. We've got lots of them pouring in.
Jay asks, can Russia get better democratically after Putin?
Sure. I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen after Putin. We don't know what's going to happen before after Putin, right? Putin may die tomorrow, or he might die 10 or 15 years from now. He seems like a pretty healthy guy. So we don't know what Russia's going to look like socially, economically, culturally by then. It is also not a monolithic country. It's a huge country, 11 time zones. It too is evolving. So I don't know. What I will say is that, this was a joke among some of my foreign correspondent friends, was that we now have, over the last 100 years, well, at the time it was 100 years, of basically personality-centered bureaucratic autocracies, that's kind of the model on which, like, that Russia keeps reproducing, right? The Tsarist regime was a personality-based autocratic bureaucracy. So was the Soviet Union. So is the Putin era. And as a friend joked, you now have enough for a Time style section piece, because it's a trend with 3. So, I keep thinking about what Putin's former political advisor once told me. This was back in 2013, which was, 30 years ago. He said, I believe that when this system falls, it'll fall in a day. And the system that replaces it will be nearly identical to the outgoing one. So, but, who knows? I think what anyone who's covered Russia for any length of time knows, like, don't predict anything.
Can you say the same thing about the United States? Like, are we at the same place where it's like, you can't predict anything?
Well, this is what I hate about this moment, is that I really feel like I'm calling on my, Russia analytic skills a little too much for my own liking. This shuttling back and forth between just sheer horror and hilarity, right? Because things are either so absurd or so horrible, or both at the same time. The fact that you can't predict what the next news item is going to be. I mean, your introduction of Domenico, or like your first question to him about, what is it at 7:35 p.m. This Wednesday evening, speaks to that too, that unpredictability and volatility. The fact that we have 2 large sections of the country living in non-intersecting informational spheres that don't talk to each other. The fact that it, gets in the way of people's personal relationships. These are not, the specter that is George Soros, as a center of conspiracy theories from the right wing. These are things that I thought I'd left behind when I, packed my bags and moved back to the States in 2012, and really wish that I weren't seeing them here today, but.
Well, I'll take this moment to plug a series that I hadn't planned on plugging, but we're starting tomorrow. Over the next few weeks at the University of Delaware, we're going to be doing conversations called Let's Talk, key conversations for today. And it's about getting students to learn how to speak across ideological differences. And you mentioned something about civil dialogue earlier, and sort of that is kind of a loaded term, particularly in some African-American communities, that, why should we be civil when the other side is not being civil? But before I jump to the next question from Angelina, from our audience, what are some of your suggestions for how to talk to people who you disagree with, especially as we come up on the holidays and people might be interacting with folks that in their family that don't agree with them?
I think my top advice would be just stay calm. These are really emotional subjects for myself too. Just remember that a personal conversation is not Twitter, it's not Facebook. Just stay calm. And remember that you're talking to a person that you might really care about, and don't demonize them when they're sitting right in front of you. So stay calm, stick to facts, stick to how you feel and what you see and what the facts are, as opposed to demonizing the other person and calling them names, which will shut your discussion down immediately. But, I've had this experience talking to friends and family who, for example, in Russia, who didn't agree with me about Trump, who didn't agree with me about the Black Lives Matter movement, about gay rights. I mean, all sorts of things. And I think the only way you get anywhere with people you care about but don't agree with, which I think can be a hard circle to square emotionally and psychologically, is to not talk down to them and to not get emotional and not to name call and to try to understand where they're coming from. I think personally, as a journalist, this is the thing I always do when I interview people. It is the only way I find works in interviewing people is empathy, is to, it doesn't mean you agree with them. It doesn't mean you condone their beliefs. It means that you are trying for this moment to understand where they're coming from and what has shaped their beliefs, and to kind of put yourself in their shoes a little bit. It just makes you a better debater with them, because, calling them fascist or socialist or whatever, isn't going to get you anywhere. In fact, is going to set you further back.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Good advice. I want to address one of the comments we've gotten, which is this was billed as a conversation about Russian interference. And I just want to say that given the tumultuous election, we've had a lot of other things to talk about over the past week. So let's take another question from the audience, and I'm going to turn to my student, Angelina.
Sergey wants to know, what can we expect for U.S.-Russian relations going forward?
So I think that, they're at a nadir, right? I think it's just going to be about clearing what's off the plate, like the most proximate issues. And that issue right now is an arms control agreement. And I think both sides are going to try really hard to get that done because it's a win for both sides. And there's really not much else that they can really talk about. Counterterrorism seems to be not really an issue that they cooperate on anymore. Space, maybe, we kind of needed the Russians to launch our astronauts into space, but now we have SpaceX doing it. But again, these are, you can count them on one hand, the areas on which we cooperate with Russia and talk to them about. After, after 2016 and the fallout there, and the fact that Russia has become such a toxic part of our domestic politics, has become this third rail. I think there's not a lot of room for an incoming administration to do anything with Russia. And that's on our side. On the other side, you're dealing with Putin, who is the same old Putin, same as he ever was, who sees things in a zero-sum way, that if something is a loss for you, it's a win for him. He doesn't really believe in win-win situations. He wants to keep knocking the US down more pegs because it makes him and Russia look better. So there's not really, not that much we need from each other, A, and B, we're coming at it from such different perspectives, and there's so much baggage on the American side and so much, there's now suspicion and hostility on both sides, but I think it's hard to get something done with Putin because he doesn't want to give you a win or a victory, because he feels it would kind of diminish him in some way, or Russia in some way. So, and I don't think this incoming administration is predisposed to try to find any common ground with Russia. So I think it's just going to be more of this kind of tepid Cold War stuff with them, and maybe we'll get an arms control agreement out of it, and like some more verbiage about counterterrorism cooperation with a little substance there. But I don't think there's going to be much of a change, frankly.
Interesting. All right, we have time for one or two more questions, so I'm going to toss it to my student, Julie.
UD alumna Connie Cox asks, Khrushchev gave a secret speech in 1956 or so denouncing Stalin and his cult of personality. Do you think someone in the near future will denounce Trump's cult of personality?
That's a really interesting framing for the question, especially for a Soviet history dork like myself. I don't think so, because the frameworks are so different. The secret speech was happening in a totalitarian Stalinist system where this was 3 years after Stalin's death, but his heirs were still basically carrying on, with some tweaks and amendments, still basically carrying on a Stalinist policy. And Stalin had been in power for 3 decades. He had become synonymous with the state. Even when he spoke about Stalin, he said, "I'm not Stalin." He said his son, his younger son, who was this kind of drunkard, playboy, party boy, kept trying to use his his own last name to try to get privileges. And he was basically smacked down by his father and said, "You have to stop doing this." And his son said, "But I'm Stalin." He said, "You're not Stalin, and I'm not Stalin. Stalin is the state." So this was seen as a very, jaw-dropping event, because it was basically the state acknowledging some of its mistakes. And again, a totalitarian state, a one-party state. Here we have, people denouncing Trump's cult of personality every day. Even within the Republican Party, you had, I don't know if you guys remember, Arizona Senator Jeff Flake going to the Senate floor and getting verklempt and talking about how Trump is ruining the country and the party. You have Mitt Romney challenging him. Some other Republicans, even if they end up voting with the president, they still challenge him. It's just such a different system. We are still a democracy. We are hobbling and a little bit broken, but it's still a contentious two-party system, and it just wouldn't be possible.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. So Eleni, do you have a question from our audience?
This question asks, what makes the U.S. distinct from other civilized nations where this may not be as great of an issue in the socio-political context of which we speak?
Sorry, what is the this there? Do we know?
I'm assuming it's just in regards to the U.S. in general amidst like current politics and like world politics.
Yeah. So I think what had set us apart before was our institutions, the kind of norms we had. I think now in the last 4 or 5 years, we've realized that norms aren't enforceable, and that a lot of laws aren't even enforceable, and that they're not self-enforcing. So if you saw, for example, how many times members of the Trump administration violated the Hatch Act with absolutely zero consequence, that tells you a lot, right? Our message to other countries and other societies is be more like us and have independent institutions and have rule of law. It's really important, right? Well, it turns out rule of law is, what does that mean if you don't enforce every law uniformly? What does it mean to have independent institutions if you, for example, like the State Department or the Department of Justice, if you, in the case of the State Department, completely gut it, or in the case of the Department of Justice, drive many career prosecutors to quit because you've so politicized law enforcement, or you have, and I've encountered this personally as a journalist, where you have your, investigatory agents and your prosecutors leaking to journalists because they're afraid that when they bring a case inside the DOJ, that it's going to get swatted down or kind of buried because it goes against the interests of the Trump administration. And they're so worried that they're talking to journalists who are normally, anathema to them. I do still think that, Domenico talked about his dad. I know my immigrant dad is watching, and he's also very optimistic. Hi, Dad, about this country and the things that make it different and special from other countries in the world. And I do share his optimism, but I think we've also seen in the last few years that, for example, if we look at Europe or Canada, that there's other ways or New Zealand, that there's other ways of doing things, that our way isn't necessarily the best way. And you can get better outcomes, for example, in public health or even democracy. If you have, for example, a parliamentary system where it's collaborative, where like the incentive is to find some kind of collaborative solution or a coalition, as opposed to a two-party system that's designed to be essentially adversarial, where somebody like in a zero-sum game. I don't know. Maybe this will. Domenico talked about some soul searching and accountability. Maybe this will trigger eventually a new era of American politics where we reevaluate how we do things and think about doing them a little bit differently.
Well, and I think you're right that the history of American politics, every era has been very different. We have conducted politics and campaigns and presidential campaigns differently over the course of the 240 plus years that we've been in democracy. And I think that we're in a transition period, and we need to look at this as like, okay, who do we want to be? What do we want to look like as a nation? So I want to thank you, Julia. This has been so pleasant to talk to you. I enjoy your perspective, and ordinarily this is when everyone would say, thank you, give you a big round of applause. Unfortunately, everybody's on mute, on silent, but I want to thank you so much. And I hope maybe when things are back to normal, I can bring you to the University of Delaware campus. You can visit in person.
I would absolutely love that. And I'm going to hold you to that. So,
okay.
But thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun and a really nice bright spot in all this dreary election coverage.
Thank you, Julia. So I want to thank everyone for being here tonight and for this entire series. I hope you've gotten some insight from the variety of perspectives that we've featured. We have one final event next week where we'll be discussing, whatever the state of politics is at that point, with C-SPAN's Steve Scully and PBS NewsHour's Yamiche Alcindor. You can find previous programs plus lots of resources at cpc.udel.edu. Please join us for Election Aftermath 1 week from tonight on November 18th at 7:30. Thank you so much for joining us, and good night.